Awesome. So we are gathered here today for Content That Connects. This is a workshop that's all about how to develop a customer-focused social media strategy that supports your brand goals. And I'm joined by my co-host Shanna Keller, and we'll introduce ourselves properly here. I'm Becca Brown. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a mom of 2 kids and 1 very large dog who I thought might be joining us today, but she has decided to stay downstairs. I live in Vermont and am a snow aficionado. I'm also the founder and CEO of Uppercase Industries. We're a marketing strategy and consumer insights company. So what we do at Uppercase is we help our clients, and these clients are most often product type companies in the family, food, and lifestyle space. It's a broad category, but that's sort of the general gist. We help them grow using data-driven strategy to help reach their goals and make better decisions. And so we sift through information, translate it, and then we use what we learn to craft marketing strategies that really work. And I always like to say, we believe in numbers, but we never ignore that there are humans behind those numbers. Even in this age of lots of robots and AI doing things for us, we always get back to that human kind of Elon and Gusto. So we think we're awesome at what we do because we're driven by that genuine curiosity for humankind and also a desire to simplify and kind of quiet the noise that's out there. So as we continue with intros, and I'll let Shanna talk, we would love for you all to introduce yourselves in the chat, please. 3 things we'd like to know: your business, the name of your business, because there's great networking opportunities here in this chat. We'd love to hear, the name of your business, even share your social handle if you'd like, your industry, and then where you are joining from. And yes, Ashley, there will be a replay after. Awesome. So now I will turn it over to Shanna. And before I give you the floor, Shanna, I'm very excited to have you here. Shanna and I have known each other for, I don't know, maybe 6 years or so. We met when Shanna was at Whole30 and I was working with Real Plans as a client, and we really hit it off and just had a boatload of fun growing both of those businesses in collaboration together. And I'm so excited to welcome you here. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, I've been looking forward to this so much for months now. And I'm coming to everyone live from Mimi and Papa's house. My daughter and I are visiting my parents this week. So my mom helped me set up my Zoom background with the beautiful framed mirror behind me. I am a brand and content marketing strategist with deep experience on the brand messaging, content strategy, editorial planning, social media, creator and influencer partnerships, and email marketing strategies. So my skill set really indexes on the organic content side of content marketing. And very exciting, I also started over the fall writing and publishing Creator First, which currently is being published as a Substack, which is a professional development newsletter for social media creators. So this is an interest of mine that grew out of my work at Whole30, where I had the opportunity to identify and collaborate with lots of up and coming food creators, food media talent. And it was something that I really enjoyed. And I think part of the content marketing discipline and industry that is currently exploding and will only continue to become a more important piece of how content is created and distributed is around individual creators. And so I launched the newsletter in the fall with a focus on professional development for social media creators, but I also love helping brands figure out how to create an influencer and creator partnerships program or bring it in-house, because a lot of brands use agencies and don't get the results that they're looking for. And then in terms of what I do professionally in my day-to-day, I specialize in working with personality-driven brands, digital media companies, and direct-to-consumer startups doing brand and content marketing strategy consulting for them. So that is just a little bit about professionally what I get up to every day, but I'm also a mother and I live in Boise, Idaho, and especially in this season, I am skiing, trying to ski as much as I can during the work day, during the work week. So I typically try to take like a Friday or a Wednesday to get up on the slopes when there's not as many people up there, and I don't have to wait in a lift line.
Why else do we work for ourselves if not to ski in 9 a.m. on a Monday? Awesome.
Yep.
Well, Shanna, wow, thank you for that. I'm sure everyone would love to see your the sign up link for Creator First. You should drop that link in the chat.
Okay,
Wow.
yeah.
We're here, and thanks everyone for these awesome introductions. This is a really cool group of folks. Please take a little moment to read through all of these intros. It's fascinating. I could just spend the whole time just talking about the cool things you all do, but we promised you some golden nuggets of wisdom, so we're going to get to that. And speaking of which, here's our agenda for today. We'll start off by talking about the framework for growth that we use at Uppercase and that Shanna and I are both using today. We'll cover a little bit about how to build a customer profile and how to get started doing that. I'll turn it over to Shanna for digging deep into social content strategy. We'll talk a little bit about how to work with us. And I'm actually on that note going to also share a link because I heard from a few folks ahead of time. If you're like, I want to get the best spot on the calendar and talk to you about my project, there's a link to go and do that right now. We'll go into more details later on. And we also have some cool case studies if we have time. We'll get to those, as well as we'll definitely get to the live Q&A, saving about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for that. So it's going to be a packed 50 minutes, and we'll do our best to end on time and get you off and running for the rest of your day. So diving in, the what and why of consumer insights. So this is the framework that we use at Uppercase to think about consumer insights. So a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we are really all about this green circle, and it's called brand, but it's also, you could kind of think of it as sort of your passion or your expertise, or almost like yourself as the founder and entrepreneur, and kind of usually like the maker and the head marketer to begin with for your company. So we often get very stuck in this green circle, and we talk about all the things that we want to talk about, but it's so important to, you know, obviously the blue circle is very important as well. This is opportunity. This is, you know, basically making sure that there is a market to support what you're selling, right? And then the orange circle is really where we're focusing our time today, and that is your customer. So to bring this to life a little bit, I like to use an example of, you know, there's a million examples we could use, but today I'm going to talk about a burger joint. So let's say you founded a burger joint, you have the best burgers in town. In terms of the opportunity, you made sure that your burger shop is, you know, not in the middle of nowhere. It's on a road in a city or a town with enough population to support your burger shop, and so people could come in the door. So that, and also not on a road with 7 other burger shops in the same road. So that's the opportunity piece. Then when we think about brand and customer and making sure we're overlapping so that we get to this middle spot here, you know, maybe you are obsessed with the meat blend that you have on your burger and the patty and like all of that, and you love to geek out about it. But oftentimes what happens is your customer, like, of course they want the meat to be good, but they're really more obsessed with your toppings. And so that's what is really bringing them in the door. So if you can see how this Venn diagram would actually start spreading out, if you're over here talking the patty and they just don't care about the patty, they want you to talk about the toppings. So that's how we learn about, that's what we mean when we say you have to learn about your customer, understand what is motivating them and what they care about. And then that allows you to talk about, in very simple language, to talk about what they care about instead of focusing on what you care about. Which is also important, but you know, you have to have that right balance. And what we find is that when you start saying the right things to the right people, it just unlocks this next level in your business in so many ways. So we see our clients exceed their goals on product launches and campaigns. We see audience size and engagement rates grow. We'll talk a lot about that today in the context of social. Big picture revenue growth, you know, usually after doing this work, our clients for the next couple of years will see explosive growth in the double digits. and across the customer journey. So from when they come into your world, maybe they make that first purchase, and then maybe they come back for another purchase, you're seeing higher conversion rates across that journey. And then, not last, but certainly not least, is increased work satisfaction and motivation for you and your team. And what this does, it allows your team to focus, it allows you to get on the same page with everyone and really be all kind of driving on the same path versus like having these little side conversations about like, oh, does the person care about the meat or the toppings? Like, you just know it's the toppings. And so you can kind of all get your ducks in a row there. So we're curious to hear, do you all use customer data already in your work? And if you do, I'd love to hear a little bit about how, so that we can kind of tailor our conversation or answer any questions. Pause for answers and quick sip of water. And then we'll get into the key pieces of the customer persona or profile. Feel free to answer in the chat at any time as we go along. So when we get started on building a customer profile, this has lots of, we're using customer profile today. This has lots of fancy names, avatar, consumer profile, ideal customer persona. And if you don't even get me started on like the venture capital and startup world, there's all these funky acronyms. But, essentially, this is a generalized profile of your average shopper is what we're talking about. And so to start wrapping your head around this, it's important to focus on these three sections. And what I often see and what we try to steer our clients away from is I often see brands start with this last section and all about how your brand fits into their life. It's natural, you're running your business, so of course you're tending to put that first, but we actually flip that, and our approach looks at it as sort of an upside down pyramid. When you're building your customer profile, you want your customer to be at the top, and then your industry to be in the middle, and actually your brand is a relatively small piece of it, because let's be honest, your company, that if we think back to that Venn diagram, the overlap between your company and your customer's life is actually quite small. And it's really important to acknowledge that, because, then that lets you overlap in the right place. And it also acknowledges that, your customers are real people with like real shit going on in their lives every day that's distracting them from what you're saying. So all that's to say, we start out with the demographics. So this is things like, are you selling to mostly female identifying consumers or male or in between? Or, this can be age, this can be race and ethnicity and geography, suburban, urban, all that kind of stuff. And again, this is general. I usually say the demographics are often the least important piece of your profile, but it is really important to have a good sense of that for things like contextualizing your message, right? So if you're talking to baby boomers and you're like mentioning, you're sharing some memes, and Shanna's going to have some really awesome examples later on, you want it to be the shows that they're actually watching. So I'm thinking of my mom, so maybe it's going to be like a Yellowstone meme instead of a White Lotus meme. And that's really important for capturing their interest, their attention. Thinking about your customer a little deeper, then it's important to start sketching out their habits, their hobbies, and their interests. That kind of builds a more complete picture of who they are. So is this an artistic person, or are they a fitness junkie, things like that? Are they like Shanna and I and like ski enthusiasts? Then the second piece is how they interact with your industry. So this is where you get into attitudes and perceptions. If we're talking, I'll keep going with the burger joint example. So, how often are they eating out, eating burgers? What do they think about it? Do they look at that experience as an indulgence, or do they look at it as just, a regular meal that their kids love? Kind of untangling all of that becomes really important. And when you're starting out, we'll talk about how to do this in a data-driven way in a sec, but when you're starting out building your first customer profile, or maybe you've been in business a few years and are kind of just getting to this now, that's totally fine. You can start this process with your kind of built-in and acquired knowledge that you and your team have, and just make your best guess to get started. And then as you go along, you find data opportunities to validate your hypothesis and assumptions with data. Once you get, pretty big, it's really important to then go out and check those assumptions, but it's totally fine to get started with just your hypotheses and best guesses. At the end of the day, it's important to just kind of coalesce around one profile. And then finally, how does your brand fit into their life? So what specific challenge are you solving? Are you bringing, and how do you make them feel? Are you bringing something super functional to the table? Like, we're making your life easier by crossing one dinner off every week. Or is it like, this is what you've been craving, and you're going to feel so satisfied after you eat this food? So there's so many directions you can go in. You need to kind of pick one that fits your customer. And let's see, I see a couple of things in the chat here. Coley is saying sometimes maybe through email and data interrupt through polls. That's great. Anecdotal discovery conversations. Ashley, that's awesome. That we call that qualitative data. That is really important. I wish every founder or head of marketing would spend like 2 hours a week just talking to their customers. I think the world would be a better place and businesses would be more successful. So discovery conversations are awesome. And yeah, that's great. So when you look at how to then go and find and target that customer, this is where we start overlapping into kind of building a channel strategy and getting into social media. So your primary channels are really often going to be driven by demographics. So simple things like a Facebook audience is going to tend to be a little older. Instagram, TikTok, you're reaching a younger audience. There's tons of public data that you can just Google, and if you're curious, if you're trying to decide which channel to prioritize and you have that customer profile, go out and see, you can just Google like average Facebook user profile, and then you'll see if you do that for all the social platforms, you can easily make that choice with a little bit more from a more informed place. Then we also start looking at how folks interact with your industry overall in the sort of media and social space. So maybe this looks like making a list of other brands and influencers they might follow, keeping track of what type of content is trending in that industry. And then in the end, you find your job is to kind of discover your brand's role. So what does your brand and then your approach, your tone, and the type of content that you are producing add to the industry? Are there opportunities to disrupt a norm or reframe the story and kind of do something differently? We're finding in a lot of our client projects these days that, when you're just entering the industry, it's almost like required that you do something a little disruptive in order to get people's attention, which a lot of folks are having a lot of fun with. There's more permission these days to really let your freak flag fly. And, I always think of OmSom, which is a great Asian-based meal starter company. And they describe themselves as loud and proud. And so, this is a fun way to start getting out there and getting attention. Yeah, Melissa, I love OmSom's voice. They're amazing. And then when you want to start adding that layer of data to your hypothetical customer profile, here are a few places you can start. You might be surprised at how many numbers you already have already. You just have to kind of take a peek and look behind the curtain. So we consider your FAQs and what people are asking you in the DMs to be a type of data. So I like to think of my favorite restaurant in town, which is a dim sum place in Burlington. If you haven't been to Cafe Dim Sum in Burlington, I think I have a few Vermonters, quite a few of you are in the participants today. It's amazing, but there's one thing that I asked the first time I went, and then I hear everyone who walk in the door ask the same question. they're like, do I have to write down my order, or do I just go up to the counter and pick what I want? And you pick what you want. And so if they had like a little sign that said that, that would help kind of guide people along. That's a small example, but you can look at your frequently asked questions, and that starts telling you things about the customer that you have. So in the case of Cafe Dim Sum, they'll learn, because people are asking that, they can kind of assume that the folks in Vermont are like not super accustomed to this format of dining. So they just need a little bit more help. And that also tells you something about your audience, that they're not experts in this area. You can also look at seasonal sales patterns. So sometimes you'll have these, obviously Q4 is a big sales season for everyone, holiday shopping, that's a pretty obvious ones, but you might have blips throughout the season. Maybe that's telling you you have a blip in early May. Maybe folks think your product is a really great Mother's Day gift. And so, it's important to look at that through the year. It can be things like holidays. It can also be things like changes in the weather or trends that are driving those patterns. All that tells you something about your customer. And you can look at your best-selling products. You'd be surprised what just looking at, what's that order of the top 5 things that you sell, that tells you something about what your people want from you. Email performance, and then obviously Google and social analytics tools are great as well. And then I'm going to hand it over to Shanna to dive into the social media content strategy piece of things.
Okay, excellent. And Becca, you'll keep advancing the slides for me?
Yes, I'll keep driving.
Perfect. Okay, great. So once you understand your ideal customer, social media is a great way to start finding them, communicating with them, and building an audience around your brand, your business, your products. But just like you are being intentional about the type of consumer that you want to connect with, you also want to be intentional about the content that you are developing and sharing on social media, because ultimately you want it to drive to your business goals, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the deck. But your business goals can be a revenue goal or a growth goal, but there's several different ways to think about how social media ladders up to your annual goals. And that's why I like a really high level framework that balances those business goals and your brand identity against social media trends and norms, because every different social media platform has its own culture that the brands that do this best on Instagram or TikTok or Pinterest or Twitter, they understand some of those cultural signifiers and know how to play along. So this is the framework, and its components are storytelling at 50%. So this is storytelling about your brand, trends at 20 to 30%. No, excuse me, trends at 30 to 40%, and then promotional content at 20 to 30%. So these are ranges. It's a framework. It's adaptable to what works best for you and your brand and your product. But this is kind of the recommended frequencies that I would start anybody out at, and then have them dial in kind of a more exact percentage once you start to understand how people respond to your content. So what is the framework? This framework is an anchor for your social media content strategy. It is a way to ladder social media efforts up to annual revenue or business goals. It is a framework to help you balance your business goals against social media best practices. If you've done any kind of cursory social media best practices research, there are a million things out there that people tell you to do, and you could spend your entire workday just trying to hit the nail on the head for everything from hashtags to post sizing to how to draft your caption properly. And all of those things are great, but they won't really accomplish much for you until you have a bigger strategy that you're working long term. And then they're also agnostic to topic, format, or platform. So what I mean by that is, regardless of what kind of business you run or topics you share about, regardless of if you decide you're going to start a brand TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, And regardless of whether you focus on story style content, short form video, carousels, long or short form copy, or a mix of everything, you can still use this framework, and it is adaptable to the needs of your business. So the longer you work it, the more fine-tuned you can make it. And this framework is not an editorial calendar. So it shouldn't be confused with an editorial calendar, which is part of your annual content marketing planning. And that would take into account things like seasonality, holidays and time of year, trends that are repeatable, like dry January or no shave November, as well as cultural trends that pop up throughout the year. Like, for example, Becca already mentioned the popularity of White Lotus and how well White Lotus content went over in November and December of last year. And then the things that are driving your business, like product launches, promotions, events, and that kind of thing. So when you're planning your editorial calendar, you're either looking at an entire year, or maybe you're planning by quarter or by every 6 months. And the editorial calendar and this framework complement each other, but they are not the same thing. This framework is also not a brand strategy. Social media is a place to showcase your brand, and your brand strategy will have social media tactics, but your overall brand strategy transcends social media, and it should touch every part of your business, from your other digital marketing efforts to your products, your packaging, your services, your events, even things that are very deeply felt and held, like your values and priorities and your internal culture. So the way that you interact with your employees, and your employees all treat one another and treat the customer. And then it's also not the only way to approach social media, because there are always exceptions to the rule. Some brands absolutely shine on social media while completely leaving out one of these components. It's usually just one. A great example of this is Duolingo. They have gotten a lot of press in the last 18 months for their winning TikTok strategy. And if you go check it out, it really leans heavily on TikTok trends that are interpreted through a very finely attuned brand lens. So I've read and heard the woman who leads the TikTok strategy at Duolingo, and she really understands exactly how their brand gets filtered through TikTok trends. It's like her superpower, it's her zone of genius, and it includes virtually no outright promotion of the product in the typical traditional sense. So I don't know how they measure success on TikTok, how internally Duolingo would measure that success, but by any metric, I mean, they're very successful. She's so good at it, it landed her like 30 under 30 this year. So incredibly successful, but I don't know exactly how they ladder that back to KPIs or annual goals, because there's no outright promotion on that TikTok account. So, her framework would just have the two parts. Okay, so let's get into the details of what each type of content involves. So promotion is offers, launches, announcements, and sales. So this is like 20% off all custom orders this week, refer a friend programs, bundle and save opportunities, which I'm sure, kind of enter and exit your marketing calendar throughout the year. It would be launches. So when you launch a new product, when you launch a new service, when you release something, anything like in that vein is a promotion announcement. So, hey, my next book is out next November. You can pre-order it now, that type of announcement, important event that's happening. And then sales. So it's like Black Friday through Cyber Monday, President's Day sale, any type of sales event that typically drives to your revenue goals for the year. All of that falls under that promotional umbrella. And you can just see here, I've pulled examples. They're all from Instagram, because I am just very much a millennial that follows every brand I ever hear about on Instagram. So I went through and pulled examples from Instagram for all three of these components. And here's two that I found, one from a apparel brand and one from a manicure brand that is very straight promotion on their Instagram feeds. Okay, why does promotional content matter? I mean, it literally reminds people of what you do and sell. Becca was the one that added this point to the slide when we met earlier this week, and it immediately made me think of this postpartum company that I follow on Instagram, who does an incredible job with the educational brand storytelling on Instagram. And it's really useful. And I'll read a lot of the carousels that they publish and learn a lot from them. But as someone who has followed them for years, and I regularly engage with their content, like I could not tell you exactly how they make money. And so when Becca said, it really reminds people of what you do and sell. That's important. Like every once in a while, you need to raise your hand on your winning Instagram account and be like, hey, by the way, we sell aprons or whatever it is. It's a sales tactic. It's a revenue tactic. You can convert your social media followers into customers. It keeps your lights on. At the end of the day, you have overhead that you have to have money to pay. You have to pay employee salaries, you have to pay rent on your storefront, whatever it is. So that your social media strategy should support that in some way. And then it drives directly to revenue and growth goals. So
Sorry, that got a little cut off here in my.
yeah, that's okay. I think I was reformatting this slide the other day and did not a great job of it, but yeah, so you have revenue and growth goals for your business, and you can ladder social media up to those, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, kind of exactly how that happens. And you can, that's an okay thing to do. That's a very acceptable, fantastic use of social media marketing. All right, so why shouldn't every piece of content be promotional? Because it can get kind of boring for your followers. I mean, most social media platforms are not broadcast mediums, they are conversational mediums. And just like any conversation, it can get boring on the other side of the dynamic when that conversation isn't ping-ponging back and forward. Something that's special about social media really is that engagement that you can have with your audience. And straight promotion doesn't always lend to that. It can take without giving. Value-added content is a big content marketing buzzword, but all that means is it's content that's developed with your audience in mind as a service to them somehow. Either you're educating them, making an experience easier for them, giving them something for free, like a digital product. And what that is it is an exchange, even though it might not be an exchange of money, but you're exchanging something valuable for their time and engagement, which is also valuable for you as the brand. So purely promotional content doesn't usually respect that balance. It can be impersonal. People really want to see themselves reflected in their social media feeds, and promotional content doesn't always say a lot about them. It says a lot about your products, the sales that you're running, but it doesn't always say a lot about your user. And it's not always the most fun for your content team to work on, and people should have fun at work, in my opinion. And I think most social media professionals, what they're really good at is relating brand identity and brand personality to whatever thing is trending. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And you want whoever's running your social media, you want that to feel fun for them. So that's why every piece of content shouldn't be promotional. Okay, so storytelling. So what is brand storytelling? This is anything that has to do with your brand's personality, which can show up in the visuals, your copy, your creative decision-making, the values and passions, the compelling reasons why you went into business that feed your mission, your vision, and your value statements. It could be, details about your products and services. So this is different from promotion. It's the storytelling element, illuminating why your products and services are so important to you. So with Becca's example of the burger joint that really loves their meat blend, 50% beef, 50% lamb, maybe their consumer doesn't care as much about the beef blend because they need to be educated on it a little more. Like, why is that so special? Can they build a really beautiful piece of content that explains how that burger blend is so superior, and really start to teach people something about what they should expect out of their meat? I think that would be a cool way to have that conversation around the burger blend and really edify and educate that ideal customer for the Burger Shack. Every day. Oh, and then, okay, so benefits. How are your offerings making the consumer life better? Becca's point that your product or service intersects with such a narrow part of someone else's life is a really excellent point. And what I like to do is try to demonstrate to the consumer, when I've got their attention for that limited amount of time, how this product is enhancing that part of their life, solving a problem for them, making something easier, changing it in some way that's going to revolutionize or up level it for them, so that they, buy the product and give it a try and see if it really is as great as what you're sharing about it. And this storytelling piece is your opportunity to do that. Education and expertise. So you have a depth of knowledge on your industry that sets you apart. Like if you source handmade wooden objects from artisan communities around the globe, you would know a lot more than I do about traveling to those regions, the local customs, the wood that's available in different local regions, and what makes it so special. And any of those kind of branching and forking topics are really good fodder for social media storytelling content. And then behind the scenes, so illuminating the how and why of what your company does can make for really awesome storytelling opportunities. All right, so why does this kind of content matter? It's a brand affinity contact that can give people reasons to fall in love with your brand. It provides depth and personality because it literally tells the story of why you do what you do. It attracts an audience based on values, passion, or identity, or aesthetic. So especially for millennial and Gen Z audiences, this is really important. I just read an article in Forbes that said 68% of Gen Z and millennial consumers tie a shopping decision to their values. So they consider things like ethical manufacturing and workplace culture and sustainability. If your brand already has those values and practices those values, it pays to communicate them openly and clearly. Relatively low risk way to test messaging and visuals. So organic social media is a great like lab for testing new content, and that down the road you could maybe turn that into a successful paid advertising campaign because you know the messaging works, or maybe a PR storyline because you know that people are really, really interested in that type of messaging and the way that it's been presented on your social media. And then it's also just an opportunity for meaningful engagement, which means the relationship that you establish with your audience can provide really strong, to Becca's point, audience insights. It can feed product development, and it can inform enhanced marketing strategies. So you can say, okay, great, we know that this did really, really well on Instagram, and we want to try to run a few ads on Hulu's self-service ad platform. Let's see how we can take this messaging and these visuals and translate it to those Hulu ads. That would just be one example. Okay, so why shouldn't you always just be storytelling about your brand? It is your primary piece of this framework. Up to 50% should be brand storytelling, but the other two types of content have utility. So like we already talked about, promotional content will drive directly to revenue and business growth. And then trends content, which we're talking about next, my favorite, it's an audience growth and a reach tactic. So it'll help you reach people and grow that following. So, okay. Trending sounds. Or actually, let's get into trends first. So you can see my examples. So the two examples that I picked here, we had to get the White Lotus one in. This is a brand called Sunday Scaries. They're a media company. And so their business model is going to be a little bit different than like a products and services company, but they always have the best shareable content, and their White Lotus memes always did like incredible engagement and numbers. So I had to include one of their posts here. And then the other one is Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know if everyone on the chat knows his dating habits are like really odd, but he recently broke up with a girlfriend over the fall, and it was like a really big news story and very funny for certain reasons. I'm sure not for the gal that he broke up with. And I thought this brand did a really good job of their kind of spin on it, which was empowered and more feminist and really making fun of Leo and also relating it back exactly to their products. I thought they did a really good job. So, okay, what are trends? It's a big umbrella that can hold anything from trending sounds. We all know it's corn from last September, or the Negroni Spagliato with Prosecco sound from later in the fall. Sometimes sounds break really big and they end up kind of spreading like throughout culture so that even like your parents have heard of it, but often they are smaller and they circulate in niche communities. So it can be really useful in connecting with a subgroup of consumer that you're trying to reach. It can be cultural moments. So I was thinking about it. I don't feel like January has spawned as many unique cultural moments in social media spaces, but of course in November and December, it was like White Lotus was everywhere. And brands who figured out how to use that to their advantage won really big on their content. Memes are like, you know, internet inside jokes. Some are evergreen. You can use them. You can use Michael Jordan crying at any time if you have a fresh take on the joke. And then some are really fleeting. So you would only want to use it within that kind of like 2 to 3 week window where it's going viral. News cycle, celebrity news, sports news, breaking news, politics, which is a subset of news. Neutral political content can be done. It's hard in this environment, but you can do it. An example that came to mind while I was typing my presentation notes. a brand who makes high quality purses and work bags, for example, they could create like a get ready with me video, which are a kind of subgenre of TikTok or short form video content that shows someone progression from like waking up in the morning to packing their bag for the day and then arriving at the polling place and casting their ballot. And that could be a really good way for a brand to get in on like a get out the vote message in a way that's not going to like immediately polarize part of their audience. Sports, huge. There's always a big sporting moment at every point in the calendar. And then fashion. So I added this one this morning because that Doja Cat look from Paris Fashion Week, where she's like head to toe red, tons of coverage right now. And it's really gaining traction. And I feel like a brand who figures out how to use that look in their social media content would get a ton of engagement. So a couple ideas I had are, if you have some kind of product to which color is a big deal, like t-shirts or bags, you could do like product colorways that are similar to that shade of red that she wore, or maybe like take that shade of red, the bag that you sell that's in that similar shade of cherry red, and show it styled like 7 different ways or something, inspired by Doja Cat looks. Or if you were like a home decor business, you could take the different Doja Cat looks from Fashion Week, because she just did like a menswear look yesterday that's now going viral this morning. And you could say like, okay, cool, here's a living room inspired by her red look, here's a kitchen inspired by her menswear look, and here's a library room inspired by like the look that she's going to wear today that will be all over the news tomorrow. So that's just one example of how you can really get a lot of juice out of fashion if it happens to intersect with your industry at all. Okay, so why does trending content matter? It's broadly appealing. So, you know, people recognize it, like it. It kind of cuts across a lot of like generations and demographic tastes. It plays nicely with the algorithm. So this is going to be like a small dive into the important thing I want you to take away about the algorithm. Pretty much on every platform, the first handful of users who see your content when it's published, if they interact with it, engage with it, leave a comment, like it, share it, etc., that's what gets it served to more users, and then more users, and then more users, period. That's the biggest thing you can understand about the algorithm. So like, yes, other factors can help support that process, but that's the thing that counts the most, is that the first couple people who see it, like it, engage with it, and send it on to their friends. So that's why trends content gives you like a bigger opportunity to get those healthy engagement numbers, is because people are already primed to interact with a White Lotus meme because they're opening up Instagram and that's everything they're seeing. So you're really situating and contextualizing your content within this broader conversation that's happening on their Instagram feeds while they're thumbing through the app. It's an audience growth tactic. So social media trends are kind of like shorthand for wit and humor and aesthetic. And if you know your audience well, you will know what kind of trends will play with them. And it's like a siren call to your people. You will find them and they will find you. It can boost reach and engagement. And that is really great for this halo effect. So if you have a piece of trends content that does really, really well with reach and engagement, you will notice in your analytics on whatever social media platform you're looking at, your other content that was published around that date will also have better engagement and better reach, because as people see that you made a hilarious joke about something, you know, wild that LeBron did on the court last night, they'll go to your page and start interacting with your other posts to see if you're always this funny, if you're always this engaged in culture. And they hopefully will even hit that follow button if they like what they see. And so that's why trending content kind of has this halo effect that boosts everything else around it. It's less of a broadcast, like I said up top, and more of a conversation, a way for people to make a joke back to you and have fun with the stuff that you're posting because it's relatable to them. They see something of themselves or something that they recognize in it. And then also it's fun and creative. So like I've said already a couple times in this presentation, like people love to have fun at work, and content that sits at this intersection of brand and trends is really, really fun to concept and produce and publish. You can make it kind of like a group project. or have, you know, yourself and a small team of people do it. And it's like really just a fun, creative thing to do. Okay, so why shouldn't every single piece of content just be trend based? So it can't all be cats. In my role at Whole30, like in the 2015, 2016 early days of brands on Instagram, we would make jokes that like the best way to build the biggest following on Instagram at that time would just be to post like 3 to 4 cat memes a day. You would get like millions of followers that way. But like, would those followers care about the program? Would they support the products and services? Would they stick around long term as loyal community members who are invested in the success of that brand? Like, no, they're there for the cats. So you really can't just constantly be posting memes and then be confused about like why those followers aren't translating to sales or customers, because you haven't done the work to connect them all the way through to like what it is you do and why they should care about your brand. Reach and engagement can be really broad, but it's often shallow. So it'll be, the comments will be like LOL or an emoji, which is great. We love that engagement. We love a comment. But what you're really looking for long term is kind of this more deeply rooted connection to your ideal consumer. And so the reach and engagement can be helpful in that it spreads it far and wide, but then you have to back it up with some strategy on the other side of that reach that builds for the depth that you want to see out of your community.
Amazing. So we wanted to, Shanna, I just have to say, I love hearing you talk about the social media world. It's just like you have so many great examples and they're just all like right at the top of your mind. It just shows your prowess in this area. So thank you for sharing that with us.
I apologize. I forgot to go over the prompts. So if the one prompt that I was interested in is if you've been enjoying like any trend or meme recently, drop it in the chat because I'd love to see what's resonating with everybody.
We have a few. So I asked that question right in the chat while you were
cool.
while you were talking. So we got a few, but we would love more. Dry January is popular. So we wanted to kind of tie this all together for everyone, and give you a few examples of how you can take both the knowledge of your customer and your social media framework and tie it back to your specific growth goals. And so we have a question for everybody. We're curious how your content currently how is your content currently contributing to your goals or revenue? You know, if you've established that path from social to your goals, whether it's a sign up for an email or revenue, we'd love to hear how that's working for you. So we'll go through this pretty quickly because of course this always happens. Should make these 90 minutes. We're running out of time.
I'm sorry. I knew I was going long, but I couldn't help it.
No, you were great. You're perfect. So when you think about revenue, what you can do is, you know, we're tracking shopping behavior and conversions through social platforms to discover what sells. So, you know, maybe you post one of those promotional posts that Shanna was talking about earlier, you have a new product and then you notice a sales lift that day. That's how you can start to track that. Or, you know, you can look on the back end and see if you have everything properly connected, you can literally track like, okay, that click thing came through from Instagram and we got the sale. And you also want to be mapping social media to any existing funnels you already have. So sometimes that looks like, okay, we know we sell great on email. So we're going to try to get our social media posts headed towards an email sign up. And then we kind of have that email address and can start selling. Shanna, I'll let you take growth.
Okay, perfect. So in terms of growth, you can build anticipation and runway to a successful launch. So basically what we mean by this is like, if you know you have a new product coming up in April, and you know that trending content tends to do really well in terms of building reach and engagement for you, maybe you flow a little bit more of that trending content in mid-March through to when that product launch happens, because that means that your content is going to be at the top of people's feeds. They're going to be habituated to interacting with it. And then when you drop that new product launch content, it's going to give it more of an opportunity to soar and be seen and be well engaged with. So that's just one way you can use this framework to kind of prime your audience to be excited for promotion, a new like launch or a new product launch, that kind of thing. In terms of, I need to just resize something on my screen really fast. Okay, so then attracting partnerships, opportunities, or investment. Okay, great. So this is something that I really love in terms of a growth goal for using social for, because sometimes the direct conversion, sales conversion through social media can be tough. And the different social media platforms and companies, Meta, TikTok, et cetera, they have a lot of motivation to figure that out and start to habituate the consumer more to making just those purchases through their app. And they are trying. And I think that eventually, maybe even this year into next year, that will become more and more the norm. But right now, I do hear from kind of across industries and across business types, it's really hard to drop like a link in your story on Instagram and actually get people to buy. So what I really love encouraging people to use social media for is for these other types of growth goals. If you are wanting more brand partnerships this year, so you're partnering with another brand, if you are wanting opportunities to work with a certain creator or influencer, or if you're looking for investment, social media can be a really good place to kind of build your case for any of those things. You can start, first of all, building an audience for anything is going to give you more leverage, because everybody likes to see like, oh, you have this many followers on Instagram and your following's extremely engaged. That just works on a lot of different levels for the types of partnerships that you might be approaching. I know that when an investor is vetting you for potential investment, like they will take a look at your social media presence. They're looking for proof of concept. They're looking for a strong brand identity and presence, something that communicates and reads really well through the screen, ability to capture and retain customer loyalty, and a strong and activated consumer base or community. So, you know, that is one way that social media can really support that bottom line, even if you find that it's hard in your industry to directly sell through social media.
That's such a good point. And then innovation is, social media is a place you can get, it's just rife with innovation ideas, whether that's an inspiration for a new product, a new service that you can see no one else is offering, or tapping into an untapped market. So many ways you can use this, all of the socials to drive your business growth. Let's see, we wanted to take a couple of minutes to share how you can work with us, either both of us together or separately. So we put together a nice little package that Shanna and I would love to help anyone here with, or any friends you have who might be interested in getting some support on these areas. I will say, so neither of us, as you can probably tell, we're not like these, shiny internet marketing people. So we did put this package together, but what we usually do is do a custom package based on, exactly what you're dealing with. But we did think this would be a really applicable consulting scope for anyone trying to grow their business and nail their social strategy. So it's a growth and social strategy package. This is something that we would work together with you on for about 2 to 3 months, depending on your timeline. We'd start out by learning or help to set your goals for this year, so we can kind of tailor every step of the way. Then we'd get into analyzing that social and email data that I started out talking about at the top of the presentation, to help understand what messages really resonate. We craft a custom customer profile for you. And then we map out kind of that customer journey to identify the key marketing methods and moments in the path to purchase, and then line them up with the social media and, content, meaning email, meaning your website, all the kind of moves that you need to make to capture them at those right moments. Shanna, why don't you bring to life the last couple here, because that's your area.
Yeah, so basically, kind of everything that I just talked about, walking you and your team through that process to understand how those concepts would directly apply to your industry, your products, your services, your brand, etc. And then you'll leave the engagement with an editorial calendar that literally maps out kind of this time bound, whatever we decide on, time where you'll know exactly like, okay, great, this is the promotional post, here's the content prompts for it, this is the type of visual I'm going to try, and you'll be really equipped and empowered to start practicing this framework within your own business.
Exactly. And along the way, you have both of us working with you for those 2 to 3 months, helping to prioritize and really unlock the growth potential that's there in your business. We're really good at finding money and identifying low-hanging fruit and just making your life easier. So you, if you want to talk to us about that or anything else that you're facing, go ahead and book that 30-minute chat. It's free. And then, you know, I'm going to skim through that just to let you know. So typically this package would, for both of us coming together, would be just over $7K. For everyone on the call, we have a really special deal because Shannon and I are just, to be frank, we're excited to work with each other and with you. We're taking 35% off for everybody here. And we also have payment plans available. So this is kind of the behind the scenes access. Anyone who uses that link to book their call by next Tuesday gets access to this. And I always like to say, it's not that the call has to occur by Tuesday, it has to be on the calendar and scheduled. So it can be anytime in the next couple of weeks, really. So go ahead, that link is right there. And we'd love to learn more about your business and help you grow. And then I know we have 1 minute for Q&A, but I think Shannon and I are both available to stay on a little longer and take your questions. I'm going to skip the case studies, but I'm happy to, if you're curious about the case studies, I can send you the deck in a link and we can go through those. You could also DM us anytime. So anyone have burning questions about your specific business, you know, that you're grappling with, you're wondering what trend is right for you on social? We're happy to dive into that for a little while. And of course, if you need to hop off right on the hour, we totally respect that. So go ahead. We'll give it a minute. And you are all very welcome. I know somebody out there has a question though. Jen is saying it's sometimes hard when your brand is you selling a service, but it's super personal
because it's financial. I think in the financial sector, there is so much opportunity for education because these are concepts that, you know, the average consumer is either intimidated by or just doesn't understand properly. So that's probably the door that I would enter into when I'm thinking about content for a financial planner, is like, what are some of those major questions, areas of confusion that you can clear up for the consumer that relates to investing, that relates to the benefits that they're receiving from their place of work, etc., and start there. And then once you feel like you have a list of topics that you can explore or have a little bit more of a comfort level around the types of things you should be sharing from an education standpoint, you can start to compound on, okay, great, then like how does that segue into those promotional and trends areas? Because there's always financial news, we don't think of it as a trend as in like a dress or a new pair of shoes or a meme, but definitely financial news is very newsworthy, and your individual voice can have a really strong place in that conversation.
Yeah, Jen, and I mean, I know you well, obviously, as a friend, and I follow your social posts when you are actively posting, and I think you have a really good handle on that. The other thing that I'll add, both for Jen and Jolene, is saying mental health. The mental health arena it's so personal, and it's also so overwhelming. So you want to make sure you really get that message right. Is I think in both of those areas, just focusing on the emotional benefits. Mental health is probably more obvious than financial health there, but you know, I think there should be more like honesty. And I think, like we were saying earlier, that it's okay to be kind of a disruptive voice and to talk differently about your industry, because you do have a unique perspective. And so, you know, maybe that the headline is some like boring old Forbes News financial piece of, you know, content, but you find a way to spin it in a way that's like so relatable to the person at the checkout line at the grocery store, or, you know, either like a day-to-day thing or something you had a client change that, you know, change their life or help their relationship with their partner. You know, there's so many like areas that maybe were previously a little taboo to talk about that I think our culture is becoming more open to. And frankly, like we need leaders to kind of take that first step and open up those conversations. So that's great. And then Meg, I want to get to your question. You're saying you're not great at tracking trends and avoid this type of posting for fear that it will miss and, you know, kind of not land correctly. I feel this so hard, Meg, like, like you're not cool enough to follow the trends. And actually at Uppercase, we're working on a batch of memes because we decided, like, we talk about some numbers so much in our content that, and we're not stuffy, boring people. So we decided we need more humor, but it's a little scary to be like, hey, this is funny. And then it's just silence. So, Shanna, what do you think for people like us who are worried about looking uncool? How do we start following trends?
You know, something that I do that's helpful if you want to understand what's trending, especially around like trending sounds like TikTok and Reels, is there's actually accounts on both of those platforms, Instagram and TikTok, that will say, hey, this is trending, here's how people are using it. And there's good reasons and also maybe like downsides to following an account like that. One, it can start to kind of help you understand like, oh, okay, here's what people are enjoying and this is why, and get your brain working on the types of jokes that go over well on those platforms and that kind of thing. On the downside, it's like if 1 million people are following an account like that, then 1 million other people are seeing like, oh, this is the next trend. And so it becomes old very fast. But that's where I love to access a few of those accounts. Yeah, I would say also social media is something that you are going to be personally responsible for your brand or business. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like someone else can run it for you who is a social media native or a social media, more habituated to social media. Excuse me, I try not to use the word native. But if you are going to, I would say like set a timer for 15 minutes and just scroll every day. You don't have to spend a ton of time on there, but it does really help you to understand like what's popping off and what people are enjoying at any given minute.
That's great.
Make it make it something you check off your to-do list every day.
Yeah, I find that super helpful. And then Shanna, as you were talking, I was thinking maybe we can share like 3 of those accounts that you're mentioning in the follow-up email when we send the replay link. I think I would personally love to start looking at that.
Yeah, definitely. That's better because I was about to pull them live and I was like, oh, this could be a rabbit trail that we don't want to go down live. But yes, in the follow-up email, absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we've got all the questions here. We're happy to answer some more if anyone wants to post one more in. And as we said, we are available online. You'll be getting some emails from us with information as well as the replay. So look out in your inbox there. And we wish you all the best. We are here cheering for you and can't wait to see some White Lotus memes roll into my feed from this group here. And Shanna, thank you so much for coming on and joining us here today. It's so fun to listen to you in your zone of genius and learn so much as always. So this has been great.
Thank you. I've had so much fun.
We'll wrap up there. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.